So how do you reach the final boss of a Sanctum, and on average get multiple divines per run? Well, I don't know all the answers, but I do know how I've been able to do it quite reliably since early in the league. But before I start talking about how to abuse the Sanctum, I have to start talking about one very important aspect of your strategy, which a lot of people forgot to do for way too long, myself included. This is a mistake to avoid. Be sure to unlock the Sanctum quests in Act 2 and Act 7 by following Divina until you reach the Forbidden Sanctum. This unlocks very important things like relics, pacts, and merchants. Relics are your meta progression system. Without them, your runs are going to be pretty darn brutal. The merchant is of course Divina herself and will sell items. The accursed pacts offer you a bonus and a malice. So you might get something really good combined with something really bad, or something kinda good combined with something kinda bad. In some cases, you can even turn this around entirely and take on a malice that could be a bonus for you. Plus, if you don't unlock both of these quest states, you'll get more afflictions. I think a lot of the players who felt like their Sanctum wasn't rewarding simply forgot to unlock these quests and were getting a far more punishing experience that was in fact less rewarding. So with that very important point out of the way, let's start talking quickly about relics. Relics are your meta progression, and they're broken down into two forms, normal relics and sanctified relics. The normal relics are your meta progression within the Forbidden Sanctum itself. Some of my favorites are % max resolve or gain resolve on boss kill. The best way to get relics is by running more Sanctums because you can gain them as random drops anywhere. Sanctified relics, on the other hand, are dropped by Lycia, or is it Lycia? Let me know down in the comments if it's Lycia or Lycia, the final boss of the Forbidden Sanctum. This means after each successful run, you will get an incredibly rare, potentially very powerful, account-bound item that most likely isn't for the build you're playing. Though some of them are quite nice. I have one with block and move speed. Let's be honest, a sanctified relic for movement speed is good on pretty much every build. But now that I've got all my relics, how do I actually run the Sanctum? For floor 1 and 2, my main focus is on getting coins and boons. While there are some afflictions I'm willing to pick up, I don't want anything super bad. For example, being taken to a room that I didn't choose. That could be run-ending and absolutely isn't worth it. In general, the currency rewards on floor 1 and 2 aren't nearly as lucrative as 3 and 4. The Forbidden Sanctum rewards you for exploring its depths. Therefore, my main focus early on is, again, on the things that will get me through the Sanctum, not on the shinies that might be in front of me. Sure, if the choice is between the path that gives 5 chaos and the path that gives 5 fusing, I'm probably going to take the 5 chaos, but I'm certainly not going to go out of my way to get afflictions for that 5 chaos. And I will try to get some coins or blessed and radiant fountains to try to get as many boons as possible and as much good stuff going into floor 3 and floor 4. As a note, if you happen to find an extra mini-boss within the Sanctum, I like to do them, especially because I have a boss kill relics, so I'll get a lot of extra maximum resolve. Floor 3 and 4 are where I start to focus on loot. And floor 4 almost always has at least one divine for me. If your build's a little bit weaker, you can skip the final phase of a final boss. After you defeat her, a portal will open up and you go into the Beyond. But you could also just go down and loot the other room. However, like I mentioned before, sanctified relics are quite valuable and can even be build defining, so if you're at all capable of it, do try to fight a final boss. Personally, I don't think she's overall that difficult. The only one that can be a little bit tricky is the red waves, but once you realize that it's kind of really bright and flashy, but has a fairly controlled hitbox, I didn't find it to be too difficult to dodge personally. Though I would be a little more careful if you have a negative 40% move speed penalty from an affliction. And speaking of boons and afflictions, well, I'm not really going to go into too much detail here, because most of them are honestly pretty self-explanatory. For example, if a boon gives you 50% more damage, it's probably pretty good. If a boon says you're taken to a random room, it's probably pretty bad. There are a few that can be run-ending, such as lose 5% of your resolve at the end of each room. In general, afflictions that are temporary are a lot easier to take on than afflictions that are permanent. Afflictions that snowball, such as gaining another affliction whenever you drink from a fountain, are much more dangerous and should only be obtained as a last resort on floor 3 or floor 4. Whereas something like you can't recover resolve removed when you kill a boss. Well, if you're on the room right before the boss, might as well grab it, it'll be gone before you know it. And much like how temporary afflictions are good, temporary boons are bad. You want permanent boons. And one boon type that I especially like are the vision-related boons. Being able to plan your runs ahead and look not just at what the next rooms in front of you are, but rooms after that, or if you get All-Seeing Eye the entire Sanctum, is something that I find to be absolutely invaluable. There have been so many runs where I've gotten extra divines or saved a run that otherwise would have bricked due to poor decision making, just by being able to see that far ahead. The other boons to look out for are movement speed and damage, since movement speed is always good, and damage will help you clear the enemies even faster. Overall, if you have a strong build, something that's easily able to take down pinnacle bosses, there's a good chance the Sanctum's already pretty easy for you. But that doesn't mean poor planning might not end your run prematurely. So the last tip that I have is make sure you're off to a good start. I really don't mind restarting a couple of Sanctums if my first couple rooms are really awful. And again, really awful here doesn't mean it has bad rewards. Really awful means afflictions you don't want to accept, or you path halfway through and guess what, there's an affliction that you really don't want to accept. Overall, I feel like GGG has done an excellent job of capturing the essence of what it is to play a roguelite. It doesn't integrate perfectly into PoE, but it's certainly better than a lot of past mechanics like Blight and Synthesis. And so now I'm curious, do you want to see some detailed information on which boons or which afflictions I specifically avoid or specifically gravitate towards? And do you have any favorite relics that you find to be invaluable? Let me know those thoughts down in the comments below. But so far, I've had a lot of success with the Sanctum. And clearing the final boss, not only do I get sanctified relics, but I get 3 or 4 divines very consistently. Or at the very least, 3 divines and a bunch of extra currency, that's basically a 4th divine. So far, I wouldn't say any of my sanctified relics have been too impressive, but if you've gotten a cool one, be sure to share it down below. That said, before I go, I'd like to give a special thanks to my patrons and channel members for their continued support. More about how you can support down in the description. While you're down there, don't forget to leave a like, you probably like the video if you made it this far, and get subscribed, because I'm going to be talking about more money-making stuff, like if it's worth running all those harvest memories sometime in the near future. That's all I've got for now, although I'm sure YouTube has another recommendation on screen, and there'll be some video resources in the card up in the top right. And so, thanks for watching, I hope you learned something, and I hope to see you again sometime soon.